So I was in boot camp when 9/11 happened. This is serious, guys, because you're going to war now. Some of these Taliban guys, they would be screaming on their phones to their other Taliban guys saying, the men with green eyes are here, the men with green eyes, because all you see is that little green glow. And basically, if the men with green eyes showed up, you're all dead. You're all dying. The original intent of this country was the civilians to be armed just as well as the military. What if we get overrun by a foreign nation? I was captivated by what was happening. I like out of control type things, and I wanted to stick around in Hell Week each day because what are they going to do next? Well, someone might die from this.
Guys, welcome back. Today we have an excellent show for you. Super duper excited about our guest. Going to give you a little bio to introduce him. Our guest today served as a U.S. Navy SEAL from 2001 to 2010, was a breacher, team leader, spent time at the Naval Special Warfare Training Detachment Assault Cell, teaching East Coast SEAL teams close quarter combat tactics. From 2010 to 2012, served in the SEAL Team Reserves, Team 18. Since leaving the SEAL teams, has worked in a variety of hired gun security contract roles in the U.S. and overseas. Was a GRS agent for the CIA and high-risk personal security detail protecting CIA field agents in combat environments in the Middle East. So if you've seen the movie 13 Hours, the Benghazi movie, it's that role. Was also an anti-piracy security operator deployed aboard container vessels in international waters and high-threat areas conducting anti-piracy operations. He's trained elite law enforcement units across the U.S. on close quarters tactics. And then most recently is the owner of Vanilla Guerrilla Security, tactical training company, teaching law enforcement organizations and civilians the skills necessary to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. Ben Wallick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
So basically what he's saying is, don't cut this man off in traffic or leave a bad comment because he could kill you 10 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, that's always the joke that a team guy can kill you with a toothpick. And I had a high school buddy after I graduated BUD/S. I was on leave, and he's like, hey man, can you kill me with a toothpick now? And I'm like, got the toothpick?
Let's find out. You didn't bring any tonight though, right?
No.
Okay. I will say this though, a lot of guys that I do meet that are at that level, it takes a long time for them to get mad. You know, they've seen so much in life. It's like, bro, you're not going to make me fight you. You're an idiot. Just calm down.
But the thing is that at the end of the day, the team's focus is not hand-to-hand combat. Right. You have combatives, you learn Muay Thai striking and jiu-jitsu stuff, but that's not the focus, because there's very, very few situations where you're going to be without your weapon, your firearm. And if you are, it's something real bad happened. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like dudes in the teams that are really good at that combative stuff and fighting are, A, most of them are bar fighters and learn it anyways in bar fights, or B, they kind of do that more. I mean, they would bring guys out to the team where you could learn jiu-jitsu stuff, but it was more kind of like on your own type thing, so it's kind of like guys would tap into it more if that was their thing and their hobby. But
you joined out of high school, and didn't you wrestle in high schoschool?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Now, did you know early on that you wanted to be in the SEALs? Or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, so, not particularly the SEALs. We've talked about this before. I saw the movie Predator when I was 6 years old. It changed my life. And after the movie, I was out painting myself in mud out in the backyard. And so, from that point on, I knew I wanted to be a commando, but it was more like a pipe dream. It wasn't like, is this something real? And then I started getting to high school. I started, getting into books and being like, oh, this is something I can do. And so I got all the books of every different special forces unit that's out there and see what programs they had available. And because I wasn't really big into the Navy because of water or being on ships or anything like that. So, but every one of the books kept saying that BUD/S was the hardest program to get through. And then I was like, well, I have to go to that one.
See, that's a special person. When they say this is the hardest, most people go, oh, I'll go over here then. So you were attracted to it, right?
Yeah, but you have to understand, I'll compete over Jenga and punch you in the face. I'm so competitive that I can't, I couldn't go to Army SF school, to the Q course if I knew that BUD/S was harder. For all my Army guys out there, they'll probably say it's harder. But
yeah, right.
But the books all said that because of Hell Week, it's the hardest selection process with the highest washout rate. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm doing that.
That takes a special person. I was reading, and the type of people that actually make it through are usually not the people that you would assume, to the average person, that person's going to make it through BUD/S. Think, oh, that buff guy, he's going to make it, or the jock from high school is going to make it, and it's usually the person who you think might not have it, what it takes to get through it, and they're the ones who go through sometimes. Why is that?
There's a mix of both. There's some dudes, when I showed up to BUD/S, you're obviously profiling every individual. Right. If they made it through, I'm doing this. Some of these dudes that I see. Oh, yeah. But some of the dudes are very unassuming. But then there's some dudes that fit the mold. Okay. You have every, size, shape, and character under the sun that makes it in. But they actually did a study that like a high percentage of dudes that wrestled in high school make it through buds.
Because the
particularly
pain?
because you're used to, putting your physical flesh out of its element. You're used to suffering. You're used to discomfort, and wrestlers have that kind of, the type of dudes that make, that are team guys where the humor and everything else that just kind of goes along with it. So they found the wrestlers a lot of them make it through buds. And then they also found in one of the studies that I remember that when they profiled, because they make you do psych stuff and all that kind of stuff, that like many buds graduates profiled in like the serial killer compatibility.
I mean,
compatibility.
If you need someone to go kill somebody, like,
I mean, that is the job in a lot of respects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it is. I mean, go to strange places, meet exotic people, and kill them.
Yeah, that's a good summary, I feel like.
But it's such a hard thing to get through in buds. You hear about it all the time. Having been someone that you went through this, was it as hard as they said it was?
I don't know. I mean, like if I went through buds now, I'd probably be like, I'm out. 41, just kind of broke. But like at 18 years old, man, like it was my entire universe. Like, and I was me and another dude were the youngest dudes in my class. And so most of the older guys that make it through were in like mid 20s to late 20s. Just because they've already kind of established themselves of what they want to do in the trajectory of their life.
Okay.
So they've gone to college, like, this is worthless, and then they're like, this is what I want to do. Because at the end of the day, like, you don't have to be a triathlete. Like, I was in insane shape. Like, I was I was the fastest runner in my class, fastest whole course. Like, but I overtrained when I showed up. I really didn't need to be in that kind of shape because you have to be in shape, but not triathlete shape. Well, like people think. You basically, at the end of the day, you really just want to do it. Like, you want to do it. And so for me, like, there was no way I was going to call my dad and tell him that I quit. Like, I was scared. I was more scared of like doing that than a buds instructor. Because I was one of those kids growing up where like, look at this dad, every 5 minutes, like, wanted to impress him. And so I wasn't going to do that. And B, my personality is I like out of control type things. And so like in Hell Week and all the different, evolutions they put you through, like I wanted to stick around like in Hell Week each day because what are they going to do next? Well, someone might die from this. Like, you know what I mean? To where like they're going to have to pull us out of the surf zone eventually.
Oh yeah.
And just like, but if they don't, like someone's going to really hype out and die. And then you just kind of like, I was sticking around and like, let's see what's going to happen. And then the anticipation of that, the next day passes and then the next day, and then it's Friday and they're coming out with the flag and securing us for the week. And it's just, everyone in Hell Week like entertains the idea of quitting and, you do it because you're miserable, but it was fun for me in a twisted way. I mean, yes, it sucked and it was uncomfortable, but it was like, I was captivated by what was happening, like, and the instructors, the way they were. And I was just like, and I started to build, I wanted to impress the buds instructors, like my dad. So it was like a deranged father figure thing where I was, trying to like impress them with like my skills. And so that's just kind of.
But you need that. You need to have that. If you don't believe it, you're going to make it through.
Yeah. Well, no, if you are questioning, like if there's any doubt in your mind that this is what you want to do, like Wednesday night of Hell Week or Tuesday, well, not Wednesday, because most dudes make it through, that make it past Wednesday, but Monday, Tuesday night, in the surf zone, you're going to quit. Or Sunday night is like the worst night after breakout because they want to set the tone for what it's going to be like the rest of the week, and you think that Sunday night's going to be that, intense the rest of the week. And so they mess with, you're thinking like, there's no way I can do Monday, Tuesday, because the buds instructors will be like, Sunday night, they'll be like, don't worry guys, all you have is Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday night, Tuesday morning, Tuesday. And you're thinking like,
your head.
No way. If you only think from like evolution to evolution, or like at some point, what we're doing right now has to stop and something else has to happen. It's easier on your mind to manage that and not quit.
Yeah. So you had one of the few buds courses that was filmed. A lot of it filmed.
Yeah.
Right. Is that
and honestly, I don't know why our class proctor like walked around with one of those old school, cameras, but he did, and just filmed stuff. Like,
so you've got a copy of that.
Yeah. And he gave us DVDs and, And then, you actually transferred them all to digital for me, and I've been posting them on social media and things like that.
So that's the stuff that I was seeing on your page?
Yeah. So they're different clips. I mean, it's like 4 hours of raw footage. And then what Dave did was he individually, because my dad went through the DVDs piece by piece and time marked every time I showed up, even if it was like walking by or whatever.
That's such a dad thing to do.
I know. So he did that, and then I gave that time marker to Dave, and then Dave, he transferred the raw footage, but then isolated the individual clips. So,
but you talk about your breakout, and I think anybody who's interested in this stuff has seen some of those breakout sessions that first night, essentially of Hell Week, where it's complete chaos. But and I'll
explain a breakout session.
So I want him to explain that. Okay. But yours is like the craziest I've ever seen. It's intense, and do you mind
if we actually add some of that too as you talk?
Yeah,
about
we'll show it.
Oh yeah, you guys should add that stuff.
But tell us about what breakout is and like your breakout and kind of what you were thinking through that.
So Hell Week starts on a Sunday evening. Like they make you stay out on the beach like during the day, and then you kind of come out of the tents and stuff, and then right when the sun's going down and you're looking out into the ocean, and they basically make you sing the national anthem, and right as that sun is like, and they time it right as it's starting to get dark, and then they get every BUD/S instructor like from all different phases, as many as they can, to come out of every orifice of behind every sand dune with 60 EM60s with blanks, and they light off a bunch of flashbangs and all kinds of stuff to cause just complete chaos, and then they bring you into this area called the Grinder, which sadly doesn't exist anymore because the BUD/S compound got changed to a new location. Because that Grinder's got major history, man. It's got that's where students that quit line their helmets up. It's got little fin marks for where you stand and do PT and stuff like that. But they bring you into that Grinder area, and you're supposed to stay in your boat cruise. And there's really no point to the evolution other than to just make it chaos. Like, welcome to Hell Week. We got your asses for 5 days. In the video, you hear they had like large flashbangs going off. They had 60s, like multiple 60s going off at one time. And then they bring you into that Grinder area in your boat crew, and you're supposed to stay with your boat crew. And then they have the San Diego Fire Department come out, or I think it's the San Diego Fire Department, but they have a deck gun, which is like the large gun on top of the fire on the engine, and they're just spraying it into the Grinder, so it feels like a monsoon. And it fills up. I mean, it fills up almost to your knee with water. I mean, that deep. I mean, not maybe your knee, but it fills pretty high with water. And so you just run around, and then instructors try to separate students from their boat crews and see if they notice and all that kind of stuff. Basically, they just try to, like wolves, like savage wolves trying to like find prey. They'll find dudes that are separated. Where's your boat crew? And then if they're not with their boat crew, then they'll beat them. And then they'll beat the boat crew for not having the individual. But it's total chaos. You don't even know where half your guys are all the time because they're taking individuals from different boat crews. And you're just running around not holding each other's shoulder like a bunch of idiots.
Do a lot of guys quit in that period?
A few,
just because they're like, oh man, if this is going to be the whole week, like I can't.
Well, I think in the video you hear the bell ring a couple times, but sometimes you can't trust that because instructors would ring the bell.
Oh, okay.
To make it seem like guys are quitting, so other guys that are like thinking about it, like, well, other guys just quit. I'm going to quit. So they might have. I don't remember. It was chaos for whatever the boat crew I was with, but. No, not too many people quit from breakout itself. It's later on in the evening when you're in the surf zone and they're doing stuff with you where you start to, contemplate the week's activities as a whole. So
it's literally Hell Week. I gotta watch this.
He's sitting there thinking though, like, what are they going to do next? Somebody might die. This is amazing. And other guys are like, I might be the one that dies. I should probably quit.
Yeah, it was. At least, until you're obviously, like I said, you get miserable, but I was just too entertained by what was happening. It was just too interesting for me at that point in my life. And you couldn't really hurt me physically. I mean, you could, but I was in pretty good shape at 18.
All right. So you get through BUD/S, you do well, it sounds like. Where do you land then? What team do you go to from there?
So I ended up filling out like they let you fill like a dream sheet, say West Coast or East Coast. Obviously the West Coast weather is beautiful, but I don't like a lot of the freaking granola eaters out there. So I picked to go to the East Coast and ended up going to Team 2, where I remained pretty much the rest of my career. So,
that's in Virginia, right?
In Little Creek Naval Amphibious Base.
Okay. So, can you tell us a little bit about like your time at Team 2? Like it was, it was what, a total of like 8 years that you were with that team doing your thing?
Yeah. So I was a team 2, but so originally I checked in a team 8, but I don't really consider myself, like I don't put in my bio or anything because I really only did like 3 months of team 8 before I got chalked over to team 2. Because what happened is like with the wars going on, this was like, late 02, early 03, they were pumping dudes overseas for rotations, and they called it Force 21, where they needed tons more dudes to deploy. So we actually got chalked over to 2 and did like half of a workup cycle, which you would normally do, and then deployed.
Did you say team 8? Did you say before team 8 is a jungle like focused or had been? Is that right?
Oh, well, no. So before 9/11, the teams had different areas of operations, at least on the East Coast. And Team 4 was like the jungle team. They would go down to South America, do stuff. Team 8 was the Marg team, where they would go on like a ship and then like deploy off the ship and do stuff. Okay. Team 2 was the winter warfare team, where I mentioned you guys, they would just go to Norway and party with the Jaegers, Norwegian Special Forces guys.
I have a dumb question.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, here it goes. You said team 4, team 8, okay, so how many teams actually are there? What's the range of which it starts and where it ends?
Yeah, so there's East Coast teams are 2, 4, 8, and 10, and then West Coast 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Okay.
And at least when I was in, there was about 60 dudes per team. Now it's
a small group.
It's a lot more, like 60 to 80 dudes, but more on the 60 side. Now it's a lot larger groups, than when I was in.
But still, out of 320 plus million people in America, there's like this itty bitty bit, amount of guys who can do that.
Yeah, I think the Navy, it's funny, like someone will say call me shipmate or something or whatever. And I'm like, I wasn't in the Navy. And they're like, yeah, you were. And I'm like, I was like 0.001% of the Navy or something like that, because we didn't not anything against the Navy, but we always kind of wanted to stay completely separate from.
It's a pretty different task that you guys have, a different mission.
I mean, and team guys sometimes treated regular Navy guys not very well. They would have certain derogatory names and things like that. Yeah, just because it's a culture that sometimes in negative ways can breed arrogance in a way. Especially when you take young guys, you throw them in there and say you're the best thing since sliced bread. And they get a big head and they think they're friggin' awesome. And they're really not that great at the end of the day. They're not that cool. But
if he thinks they're not cool.
I was going to say, if you say so.
Well, I was going to, as a joke, wear Go Army today on this shirt. But Dave's like, nah, don't worry. Don't do it. Is there actually rivalry? Because I grew up watching the football games between them. You see Navy and Air Force.
Well, for you guys, it'd be what, like SEALs and SF?
Yeah, so there's rivalry, not in, there's not like the Army Navy, rivalry, but there's rivalry within Spec Ops groups, And that GRS job that I did, was a conglomeration of Spec Ops dudes, so there was a ton of, that going on.
Is it just a lot of fun though? It just poking fun at each other?
It's fun. And at the end of the day, regardless of what soft unit you're attached to, it's all the same dude.
Yeah.
It is. It's all the same dude. They're all good dudes. They all want to friggin' gunsling and get some, shoot some dudes, and they all have that same attitude and mentality that I mentioned about me and Buds and what brought me to Buds. They all have the same thing. It's just they chose that route and that's where they ended up. They didn't choose the Buds route.
The timing that you joined the Navy in 2001, it's a very interesting timing. Like anybody that joined the military, especially pursuing a combat role.
Yeah.
You can't ignore the proximity to September 11th. So I think, did you join prior to that? Is that what you said? You had joined prior to the September 11th attacks?
Yeah. So I was in boot camp, in Navy boot camp when 9/11 happened.
Let's talk about that, because I think you've mentioned that a lot of the SEALs that came before you had spent very little time, if any, in combat.
Yeah.
And this will lead into a tactics conversation, but what was the overall mood in the teams, especially for some of these new guys that it was a badass role, badass unit, but it was official now. You guys, like you said, you were going to get into this pipeline to be shipped off to war. You were going to see combat. What was that?
I mean, even in Buds, I remember Buds instructors were more violent towards students because you're going to war now. You know what I mean? Like this is serious, guys. You're trying to weed out even further because you guys are actually going to go sling lead overseas.
Wow.
And this is real for you guys. Before that, in the 90s, it was all Clinton era guys that saw no combat. and they didn't even get that great of gear or training. I was total Bush era, and we got anything gear was, like a friggin' candy store throwing you stuff and good trips and that first, those first rotations overseas, a lot of those, pretty much all of the older guys had never actually fired their weapons in combat. Even SEAL Team 6, which is in Virginia as well, which is called Development Group, even they weren't seeing combat. There was some isolated little tiny things, going on, here and there, but it's not like the movies where you think team guys are just jumping out of helicopters and airplanes, going on these secret missions all over the world. It's not like that at all.
Like I said, this leads into, I think, a tactics conversation we've talked offline about, but explain how that going from guys that had not been in combat a whole lot, well-trained, serious dudes, but had not spent the time in combat like guys of your era that, fought in the global war on terror. What effect did that have on tactics?
It had an effect on our tactics across the board because honestly, much of our tactics, not only including CQB or CQC, but land warfare tactics were Vietnam stuff. Because really, if you look at it from the SEAL perspective, Vietnam was the last time team guys were in heavy combat.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, in high school, I read every Vietnam SEAL book you could imagine, which was cool for me. When we started going overseas in the wars, because, in Vietnam, they called team guys the men with green faces because some VC would just, they'd show up and, some VC would get stabbed, in the face by a man with a green face. And then in the wars, early on in Afghanistan, especially with team guys rotating over there and stuff, they didn't know that we had this night vision technology and all that stuff. Conventional units did not operate at night. Only we did, for the most, or soft units for the most part. And they would intercept cell phone traffic and stuff from some of these Taliban guys that we were hitting targets on, and they basically say they would be creeped out and screaming on their phones to their other Taliban guys saying the men with green eyes are here, the men with green eyes, because all you see is that little green glow from, behind the nods.
That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
And basically, if the men with green eyes showed up, you're all dead, you're all dying, and they were very scared of them. So that was kind of nostalgic for me with reading all those books in high school about the men with green faces. But back to your original point, so those tactics were all old because for decades they hadn't been battle tested. So we start rotating overseas, guys are experiencing actually getting shot at from hardened opposition on targets, and they're like, whoa, why this doesn't work, guys? A lot of stuff came out of the wars.
What was it that wasn't working?
Particularly with regard to CQB or CQC, which is essentially called close quarter clearance or close quarter battle.
What's the difference? Are they the same thing, or?
They're the same thing. CQB is kind of like an older school, like a 90s era type name. It was called CQB when I first came in, but now it's called CQ, close quarter combat. I call it close quarter clearance because it's essentially clearance of a structure inside some, small spaces, clearing rooms and spaces inside a structure. That changed, drastic. I'd say amongst all the tactics in the SEAL teams, that changed dramatically when guys started rotating overseas. Because before that, it was all what you call hostage rescue style CQC or dynamic CQC, where you're busting into a room as fast as you can, hair's on fire, multiple guys, as many dudes as you can get in that room, and you're just, clearing the room and stuff. And, when I showed up, as a new guy at the team, that's how we did everything. The instructors, we have a shoot house where it's a structure built where it was all live fire. You're shooting live fire going into rooms, and which felt sketchy, but that's how it was. They have changed since then to UTM and different options where it's still realistic, but dudes aren't going to die if they get hit, because I actually had a dude in front of me get shot by another dude down the hallway, with an accidental discharge.
With a real round?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
Yeah.
He
got shot in the arm. We came out of a hallway and the dude had an accidental discharge at the end of the hallway, and he shot my buddy in front of me in the arm. But so he was fine.
What happens with that? Is there a disciplinary process for that, or is that does that happen?
Yeah, there was. He was a strap hanger, which means he wasn't in our platoon. He was just, so some dudes need to go through that block of training and they're another team or another platoon, and then they join up with that platoon just to go through it. So he was just a strap hanger. This is hilarious. Not hilarious, but so he shot my buddy. So in the teams, especially at this place called Shaw's where we did all of our CQB training or CQC training, you certain infractions are certain amounts of beer, depending on what that, the infraction is.
Sure.
Now,
shooting a guy
typically,
pretty high.
typically a blue on blue shooting your buddy. It's not really a you've gone above and beyond like paying for beer. Now you're just going to get, canned. Like you're going to, or you're going to get sent back, and there's going to be some bad things that happen to you. But he had asked Jared about what kind of alcohol he liked, and I shouldn't use his name, but no one knows his last name. But anyways, he asked him what kind of alcohol he liked, and he didn't like any. He was going to buy him like the guy that shot him was going to buy him some fine whiskey or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared's like, no, I like Bud Light, which at the time, it was normal Bud Light, not Bud Light now, but
it's early 2000s Bud Light.
Yeah, early 2000s Bud Light. But he just said like, I like Bud Light or whatever. But this one dude that shot him, he comes into, because there was 2 houses that dudes lived in on that training facility. He comes into our house, we're all in the living room, and he's got this 6-pack of Bud Light. And we're like, hey, Bud, like, what's the Bud Light for? And he's like, is Jared here? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, this is for him. And we're like, and he sets it on the table, and we're like, 6-pack of Bud Light for shooting buddy?
He should have rolled up with a truck, man.
What? and then he's like, well, that's what he said he liked. And then he leaves. And we're like, and I don't know if you remember those old Bud Light commercials where it's like, here's to you, Mr. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We came up with this whole Bud Light commercial. Here's to you, Mr. Blue on Blue. Shoot my buddy in the arm. Like, but it was so terrible. Like,
did he think they were even at that point in time?
I don't know. But
that would be a great Bud Light ad. Like, it's that good. You can shoot your buddy in the arm, and like a 6-pack, that'll make it all better.
I don't think that would save them now.
It was. We were just like, this. Wow. No way did this just happen.
So was he okay? Did your buddy go back into?
Yeah, he had just a through and through. It was just a
just a through.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's like the one I had Thursday.
It wasn't standard. It was just merely a flesh wound.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. We also had this thing that teams were like, if guys got hurt or crapped out on a train evolution or something like that, in their locker they'd have a bottle of Vagisil hanging. When they came back, and unfortunately, someone had put that in Jared's locker. A bottle of Vagisil, and it's like, dude, you just got shot.
That's pretty.
But they're
rough.
just like, rub thoroughly, and it might help your healing process.
Did it help?
No. But
jeez,
sure, guys were just.
So you had actually shown me a Charlie Sheen movie that was so accurate.
One of the greatest SEAL movies ever.
The greatest SEAL movies. Can we actually pull that up, Irene? I want to see that. Do you have that in the link? By any chance?
I have a scene from that movie. I don't have the scene that he showed us.
What scene was it that you particularly showed me that was just absolute chaos?
I show the scene in my CQC classes where they bust in and they're coming out of the roof and breaking through the glass, and they're all coming in, and I'm just like, yeah, this isn't how we do things in real life.
But I do want to talk about like with your class. So like today, you've created vanilla guerrilla security. Not today, but like modern day. And so you're teaching law enforcement agencies, you're teaching civilians, some of these tactics that have evolved over time and that have been battle tested, proven to work.
Yeah.
What are some of the things, like just in a nutshell, maybe this is hard to kind of condense, but like what are some of the things that you're teaching these organizations now and showing them? You talk about like this hair on fire, intense dynamic, tactics and strategies. Like what are you showing now?
So, what we learned real quick in the wars was with dudes that wanted to throw down, and a lot of these guys were in it to win it, man, the fundamentalists. And when you have
enemies, you're saying,
when you have these types of combatants, guys you're going against that are ready to shoot you when you come through that threshold of that door. They're in there and they're armed to the teeth and they're slinging lead. When you run into spaces, like the typical old school, even the old school SWAT, shows you watch and different stuff like that, someone's dying. Someone's going to take rounds at the end of the day. Now, in a hostage rescue situation, like you have to go dynamically into a space, meaning you come up to that room and boom, violence of action. You're in that space and you dominate it. But only in a hostage rescue situation, should that be done. And in that case, you are essentially placing the life of the hostage or the innocent person above yours. And so you're willing to take that risk. But 90-something% of the missions that we did overseas were just capture, kill, just jerks with guns. And why are we running in, so not only early on we would land like the helicopters on the target, and then we'd hit the target, and then we'd flying into these rooms trying to clear them. And so now they know we're here, and now they're waiting for us in rooms. And now we open that door. Guess what's coming through that door? Lead.
Yeah.
And guys are getting ate up, and very quickly they're like, "Hey, why are we doing this, guys?" I mean, I was in high school. I was a big paintball dork, and that's what my buddies and I did, and spent all my money on paintball stuff. And but like I remember we would go to this old Western village, and when we play paintball, and when you play paintball, it's sneaking, it's hunting. You're like peeking around stuff. You're looking for other dudes to shoot, like. And then that's kind of how I was used to doing CQC or, that type of stuff. And I get in the teams and we're just running into rooms with our hair on fire, shooting live fire. The instructors are in the cadre above us, screaming at us, throwing water bottle, like yelling at us while we're doing it. And I'm like, this feels out of control. And it's like, but this is a SEAL team. It's like, this is how they do it. This is how they do business. And a couple years, a year or two into the wars, back to paintball. Wow. where you're popping a door, or you're coming up to an opening of a space, and you're slowly starting to pie around using distance and angles and cover and concealment. What you have outside of that room, into your tactical advantage, and seeing as much into that space, situational awareness into that space before you commit to it, because then you have options. Like if you come up to a door and there's a dude ready to throw down in there, you pop that door and lead starts coming through it, like you have options, right? You can get off the target. You can frag rooms like we did. You can throw frags in. I know obviously in the law enforcement world that's not applicable, but you have options at that point. If you dynamically enter that space immediately, you're committed to that space.
Wow.
And you could potentially get in 50-50 gunfight with a dude and someone's going to die.
What an expensive price to pay though. Just having to learn it the hard way. This isn't something
And the thing is like, unfortunately, a lot of these tactics that we developed in the wars were paid in blood because guys, and I hate to say this, but like because of a little bit of arrogance and pride in the way guys did things, that were older before, they didn't want to shift over to what we call deliberate CQC, or early on in the wars was called combat clearance, we called it, but then now it's called deliberate CQC. But they didn't want to shift because, the older guys were like, that's not aggressive. Because it's slower, it's more calculated. It's more methodical in the way that you approach, your angles and in these spaces. And, I kind of equate it to like these SWAT teams that I work with. They'll be like, hey, how many hunters you got? You a handful of dudes we hunt, whatever. Well, if you're out in the woods and there's a tree, like you don't bust around that tree. And be like, oh yeah, and shoot your.
That's how I hunt.
And kick the branch out of your way and just charge
and shoot your prey like the Kool-Aid man, like oh yeah, like no, like you enter that space and there's a dude ready to shoot, like oh no, like you're getting rounds to the face, like it's not going to work out well for you. So like if you're hunting, what are you doing? You're like slowly peeking around that tree, and essentially, you're hunting humans. So the same principles apply, and so. It took a while for it to develop and shift and change and get fully integrated, in all of the training cells, because the way the training cells work, at the team is the training cells are all filled with, team guys, and then they train the team. So like the teams go through the training cells, which all have cadre that are team guys. But for it to get fully incorporated on both coasts, East and West, now the development group guys, which most of my close friends at Team 2 all went over there for careers, but they started doing it before the white side teams did. I talked earlier about like, the East Coast having 2, 4, 8, and 10.
Right.
Well, they also have 6.
Okay.
Which is, 6 is the Hollywood name. The actual name is Development Group.
I wasn't aware of that.
You have to do like at least 2 rotations, at or 2 platoons at one of the white side teams, and then you can go trial for Development Group. Okay. And they were some of the first dudes over in Afghanistan doing stuff. So they started they really were the ones that started to see this first. And then got like some of their best tacticians together at their command and said, hey, we need to come up with an entire new system to do CQC. And then it eventually got filtered into the white side teams on the East Coast first, because again, you had, they're on the East Coast. They're just not at Little Creek. They're at Dam Neck Naval Base. And so, which is why like most of the guys in the teams, if you go over to, Development Group, you just say, oh, dude went over to Dam Neck because it's just a different base. But they started, telling us some of this stuff. One of my deployments, I had one of my buddies that had gone over there, and he was telling me some of this stuff, and then I was talking to my chief about it. We started to kind of incorporate some of these things internally in our platoon before we went to Fallujah, before it was even incorporated like across the board in our training cell, in our training cells. because it was saving dudes' lives. And so instead of landing on the target and then running into these rooms with our hair on fire trying to kill dudes, we would get dropped off by helicopters and do offset infills where we'd hike in, for quite a ways, like secretly, and then we'd hit them, quietly at night. You go in some of these places and they're still sleeping. Make little noise as possible. If you don't have to expose the breach, don't breach. Sneak in somewhere else so they don't know you're there. Especially in like downtown Fallujah, I did a number of breaches down there, and once you friggin' breach that door, like the whole town knows you're there.
Yep.
And it's just not to your tactical advantage, So if you equate this into the law enforcement world, like there's not, there's certain ROEs, rules of engagement that were applicable, especially in those early days, was like the Wild West for us overseas, that you can't do in a law enforcement world. But clearing rooms, going into a structure and finding jerks with guns that want to commit crimes or hurt people is the same across the board, whether it's law enforcement or else overseas. And, the stuff that I teach and have taught to many SWAT teams, it allows officers to have better decisions, make better tactical decisions. Because again, in today's, environment, unfortunately, they persecute law enforcement. They always take the side of the criminal, especially in these blue states like ours. And so, you want to make the best decision before you actually pull that trigger. And the type of CQC that I teach allows them to do that, to where they can basically get as much, like I said, situational awareness of that room before they make entry. They can de-escalate the situation a little bit, right? So say there's a dude in that room and he's got a knife and he's running, he's just, frantic and he's goofy or crazed or whatever. And let's say you bust into that room, like the Charlie Sheen clip. You bust into that room, like, hair on fire, like that might cause that dude to do something that he normally wouldn't have done. Like he might come at you with it, and then you shoot him, and then now you got a lawsuit, or you got a, investigation stuff. But let's say you pop the door, and you're slowly pieing it out from, you start at the wall, and you pie out, and you start to look into that room, and you're like, sir, put the gun down, and it kind of de-escalates. It brings that throttle control down just a little bit and can neutralize something a lot more effectively than running into that room, and most of these cops don't get the type of training that they need. And so making them make split-second decisions where they got to take someone's life when they don't have to, when you can do this deliberate style that I teach and that we work, is much better options for them.
So for a lot of people don't know this, we actually filmed a promotional video for his company a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And dude, I learned so much. I had no clue. I knew you guys planned, but I didn't know quite how much everything was thought out. Everything was tactical. I know that sounds goofy to think, but like filming you guys, well, obviously it was like a song and dance for us. We're trying to film, but seeing it from your point of view and how everybody approaches from a particular way, the way you communicate, the way that things are done, it's like, oh, that makes so much sense, but it's not obvious. And I was thoroughly impressed when we'll show some of the footage later, but man, just coming in, the way you approach rooms, the way you communicate, because you can't talk. And you made mention about you can't just tap someone on the shoulder because it could be you're trying to move them out of the way. So you reach up and grab them on the, the lower thigh or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Bro, I mean, I was impressed and I walked away with just, I already respected the skill set already, but like I walked away with just like, oh shit, this is like legit stuff. And so I feel like if these cops and these SWAT teams can walk away with just some of that stuff.
Well,
it was
like
cool.
What you just mentioned, like nonverbal, so law enforcement, in the SEAL teams, everything was nonverbal. Like we didn't want to make a single noise. And that, and the type of the deliberate CQC is a lot slower, but don't equate slowness with non-aggressiveness, right? When you actually make entry, when you actually pie that room out as much as, a center fed room, you can pie out 80% from cover and concealment. Cover is something that'll stop around. Concealment is just hiding your signature where it's not necessarily going to stop a bullet. For us, a lot of the stuff in Afghanistan, Iraq, the threshold outside of the door was actual cover, like it would stop around. So it was good for us to use. But center fed room, you can clear 80% of it from just pieing around the threshold, and then all you have left is the corners. Right? That's it. That's the only two places that exist that would be uncleared. A corner fed room, 90% of it, and all you have is one little corner left. But my point to this is that when you enter that room, it is dynamic at that point. Like you're entering that room aggressively. Like it's not slow and anything like that, because you're punching in your corners, you're clearing those last the last corners that exist and calling it a day. But it's for officers, again, you want to de-escalate that situation. When you pop that door, if there's a combatant or a perpetrator inside that space, they shouldn't see anything initially. Like they don't even know what's going on. They just, a door came open, right? Mm-hmm. Like versus, that person, if you're Kool-Aid man in that building with dynamic, when you don't have to go dynamic because it's not hostage rescue, and you're just running in these spaces with your hair on fire, what happens? You slam the door, you're stomping your feet, you're like, clear, all clear, you're making all this noise, and then guess what? That dude, almost like if he's in that space ready to throw down and shoot at you, like he can almost progressively hear each room that's being cleared, and then just set up and just wait for you to come in. And if he's waiting for you to come in, he's going to shoot somebody in that stick when they make entry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Right. Like maybe the 3 or 4 man or whatever, it's a 4-man entry, might get the drop on him, but he's going to shoot the number 1 or 2 man as they bust in through that door in that fatal funnel. Like someone's going to get shot. So
we were on the opposite side of the guns as he was coming down the hallway, and I'm filming. I'm focused on what I'm doing, and then I look at the camera. I'm like, oh shit, this is kind of scary. Like if this was coming down the hall, I'd be like, my safe's over there.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is like you talk about like how you open the door and you just kind of let it breathe and see like what happens.
Then maybe the dude inside, like he investigates,
right,
and that causes you when you're in your pie to get the drop on him or something like that. Because for law enforcement especially, like, we didn't have to announce, like, guys were killing dudes in their sleep overseas in the teams, like whether, guys were sleeping and they were sneaking in on target and stuff. But law enforcement, they have to announce, right? They have to, majority of time, they have to say, blah, blah, blah department, and so forth. So not only, so you pretty much have to do that in an LE environment. So you're going to announce yourself and then you're going to run into rooms with your hair on fire.
Yeah, right.
Oh boy. You
But every movie I've seen, that's the way the good guys win.
Yeah. No, I know. I get a lot of comments on my videos on social media, like, that's not CQC, what I'm putting out and stuff. Yeah. And it's like, problem is they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They don't understand what they're looking at because they've only seen the movies. They've only seen, because it looks high speed and cool, right?
Yeah.
But as your video that you did for me is evidence, like, you can still make it look cool and high speed, but be tactically sound. Yeah. And come home to your family at night.
Yeah. Well, and you guys talk about being on the receiving end of these tactics. Again, if you're the guy in the room, even if you're a good guy and somebody dynamically enters the space that you're in and they come crashing through, like,
my wife would shoot no matter who.
Your response is to like arm up and respond to, because like, you don't know what's happening. You don't know like what's going on. So like,
no, even crash in every room, like back when I first came to the SEAL teams, we're running in Kool-Aid Man with our hair on fire. We're crashing every room. Yeah. But most, and especially LE groups and most teams, they throw crashes like very close within that threshold of the door. So like
crashing meaning like a flashbang,
like a flashbang. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's say that dude is like deeper in that room. It's a larger room. Like that might not affect him that much. But now what did you just do? Now he knows there's like if he's deeper in that room with his gun and you crash the opening. Oh, now he's going to direct that fire. And now you're entering dynamically. Yeah. Like, I mean, we a lot of team guys have died because of not changing these tactics. And so I'm passionate about, teaching law enforcement because, they're still out there, slinging, they're all still out there gunslinging and doing it. I'm that kind of part of my life is over and I'm just teaching now. But, if these guys can go home to their families at night, that's my passion. And to just show them like, hey, here's what we learned from, hardened opposition in combat. You guys want to think about, doing business this way.
Is that like why you've now taken the path of teaching and training? Because like, it seems there's a lot of different paths that guys will go down when they get out of special operations. Some of them are they gravitate towards like the fitness element to it.
Yeah.
Some of them, are really entrepreneurial. Some of them, end up training, doing tactics, things like that. Some of them, end up doing security contracting or things like that. We could talk about your experience with that, but you've ended up kind of in this space of training tactics. Yeah. Is that because it's a passion? You've seen the difference that it's made?
Yes. I mean, it's like, I love CQC. Like, it's fun for me to teach. Like, I like setting up like a scenario and then thinking like, how would I clear this? This one company that I've worked for, that that's former SEAL Team 6 guys. We go out to sites, buildings we've never been in, and then we have to set up, a whole run. Like we have to put caution tape on stuff that's not in play and put stuff in play. But it's fun because like I'm in that building for the first time and I have to think like, how would I clear this? And then watch them clear it and then debrief them, how I would clear it. So it's fun for me. Like I would teach CQC every day, all day if I had the opportunity. Like teaching firearms is kind of fun, but it gets lame,
sure.
And especially sometimes because I've only taught I've only taught team guys for my military career. And then I'm used to teaching LE guys SWAT. But when I first started teaching civilians firearms, I was like, it was a big rude awakening for me. Because some of these people showing up with, slings from Amazon that they bought the previous night and their guns doing yardstick in the ground,
wow.
lawn dart in the ground in the middle of the, it was like, whoa, like I got to preach to like lowest common denominator. So I'd rather do CQC.
He's like, I got to put my vest on for this. I need some plates on.
Yeah. There has been some classes where I'm like, I wish I had my plates on right now.
Yeah.
But with my CQC courses, it's all, I use paint. It's simunition or UTM or, it's all paint. So at the end of the day, like if something goes drastically wrong with my CQC, because when I teach civilian CQC, it's very home defense orientated, but you have, guys, from certain clubs in the state that are coming down and doing all levels of CQC that I offer. And they're coming down. I mean, we just did a night vision CQC course with these guys. Because they got all the kit, this is their hobby, and it's a great hobby. It's like I've had people on social media be like, "Why are you teaching civilians this stuff?" And it's like, well, like civilians were supposed to. The original intent of this country was the civilians to be armed just as well as the military and have training. Just because what if we get overrun by a foreign nation? That could happen, and civilians got to actually fight, but. The other thing is it's a good hobby, right? Like dudes get together, they have fun. They're not only having fun and learning stuff, but they're also taking some of that stuff home, to their family. Are they going to be probably running, full size, CQC runs like they're doing like 12 dudes like hitting a whole building with me, and I'm teaching them like, and they got comms and they got night vision. Like probably not. Well, in Biden's world maybe, but maybe. Eventually, but it's fun for them. It's all, paint simunition, but it's super realistic because they're using their own stuff but it's simunition. So no one's going to die at the end of the day, which, I had a class where a guy almost had a blue on blue where he shot the guy. He didn't because I grabbed the dude's shirt. And
you're like, you're going to have to buy Bud Light.
Yeah. Yeah. If he did shoot him, I'd be like, hey, go get him a 6-pack of Bud Light.
Because that fixes it all, right?
I mean, with the UTMs, with the simunitions, it might.
I don't know.
It was so I took one of your courses, obviously your CQC1 course, and I've done pistol and rifle, but it's an interesting shift in your mindset to actually start pointing your gun at a live target and pulling the trigger.
Oh yeah.
And impacting them with a projectile. Because like, I remember you telling me that you've had guys that don't do well with that transition.
No. Some of these guys, they for the first time, they're actually shooting their weapon at it. Because on the range, it's all paper or steel targets or whatever. And they freeze. I had one dude, like, he freezed and went down to his knee for some reason. And then he, like, it literally...
Like in the threshold, right? Like when he's supposed to be shooting a UTM?
Well, no, so my role player was in the corner. He had already pied the threshold out. He made entrance into the corner.
And, you have role players?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I got dudes running around with realistic-looking guns that you shoot at and stuff like that.
Wow.
Various scenarios. But,
they're wearing lots of padding because the UTM would hurt.
Oh, it sucks. It hurts pretty bad. But... he came in and he froze and then went down to a knee. And then I was like, are you going to shoot him? And then he shot him. But he just
didn't know what to do.
Yeah, didn't know what to do. And like in a real life situation, you don't want that happening. I don't like require like you got to be to this level training to do my stuff. Like you can be. There was one dude that just got his FOID card like 2 days ago. Only never really shot his rifle, and he did the course and did fine. Because as you took it, Dave, it's very progressive. It's very you don't need to be. A lot of these people see these courses and they're like, that's way over my head. I can't do that. No, it's, I have females that take the course and moms, and it's very home defense orientated. I mean, we literally start from the ground up. Like, here's a door. Here's where you would want to open the door, and build upon that foundation. So, some of these people get turned off, I think, or they maybe aren't, signing up for the class because that's above my level, but
Sure.
it's not, and it is pain at the end of the day. So, but you still, you don't ever want to have a blue on blue, but it is still pain at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like you do a really nice job of preventing that, first off.
Yeah.
I made a mistake at one point. Dave Little, it was a couple of Daves that were, doing like this two-man CQC. And there's a couple of points where I got my barrel a little too close. And you were right behind me, and I didn't know. And you popped my elbow up, like, get that out of there. Like, don't shoot him in the back.
Yeah.
So, like, you've spent your career managing this same scenario with live rounds. So, like, you're very serious about it. It's not something to mess around. But I did feel like the people in our group, there was a broad range of skill levels, a broad range of experiences, to where you had some people that were quite comfortable with their weapon, quite familiar with, how to manipulate it. And then you had other guys that just, they needed more time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I thought you paired them well too, so like.
Yeah, you kind of want to, I can tell sometimes with guys show up to class and the gear they bring and the way they carry themselves, like whether this dude's probably going to be, somewhat proficient or not. And I try to pair, guys that are less proficient with each other, and so they're kind of, because again, you can only work as fast as that other dude that you're working with, and you got to be compatible. But I try to do my best, to do that.
He took one look at me, was like, not coming into class.
This guy's getting the rubber gun.
Yeah,
the training
rubber gun. He's the target.
the training gun.
Well, so real quick, I want to get in a little bit into like just modern day stuff, because I feel like everybody on the internet has their opinion, and everyone from, anybody, a 12-year-old to an 80-year-old person can give their opinion out, and it seems to have such weight to people because it's on the internet. It must.
And they're playing video games in their parents' basement.
Yes. So
eating Pop-Tarts.
Yes, exactly.
Very tactically proficient at it, though.
Exactly. But
you can learn. Like, here's the sad. I mean, not sad, but like you can learn, certain tactics in some of these video games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, case in point, my cousin, I've never been into video games, like, ever. Like, I think my parents bought like they bought a Sega Genesis for my brother and I, like back when we were like 8 or 10, and we played it for like a month, and then we went out and rubbed some dirt and ate some dirt and played outside.
He was playing Predator.
So I never really was into video games, but you can learn, like my cousin, got me into this tactical virtual reality shooter game with the Oculus thing. So I actually bought one just for this, because you literally go into a shoot house and you're looking at your kit, and you can change the shoot house stuff, and we clear rooms together, and then this other guy, other guys join us, and then I can walk up it sounds dorky, but like I can walk on a catwalk above and show them, debrief them. I mean, it's super realistic.
You
like,
say it's
mag
dorky.
Changes.
That's what we did last Thanksgiving. We all played against zombies. We were attacking.
Like, you can do mag change, like everything. Mag changes. You can pop doors. You can breach doors. You can throw frags in. And it's a good way to learn. So you can learn stuff through playing video games, but the problem is taking that arrogance over to like, thinking that now actual combat.
All right, so business idea for him. You're going to start training
on Oculus
gamers around the country, around the world on Oculus.
As long as he has an affiliate link where they can buy the Oculus through him.
There you go. Yeah.
And he gets a 10%.
And they pay to go to his virtual shoot house class. And
it was super weird the first time I did it. I mean, I got dizzy, and it was weird because I never played video games, and this is 3D, like everything, and it was weird, like because we set up a private little game room, and then this random dude, sounded like he was 8 years old, showed up in our room, and he's like, "Hey guys, like, are we gonna clear stuff? We're gonna go to a shoot house," and we're like, "How'd you get in here? This is a private room." And then my cousin just like pulls out his pistol and shoots the kid in the face. And then he, like, the body falls down, and then he dumps the mag into him, and I'm like, "Oh, all right, I guess this is how this virtual reality thing works."
That's gamers.
Oh my god!
So you never know, gamers. You might actually be playing against like a real Navy SEAL in the virtual world.
But yes, as far as like everybody like commenting online and stuff like that, I want to get your opinion of some of the things that we've done recently from your perspective. Someone who's actually been there, someone who's been on the field. Like, what was your opinion of our pullout of Afghanistan? Like, what was going through your mind when you were watching that, man? I know my heart was broken, but
I didn't watch much of it because I had to pull myself back because it made me too upset. So, absolutely atrocious. I mean, what country that we've invaded does not have a U.S. base on it? We got bases in Japan. We got bases in Germany. Every place that we've we've invaded or had a conflict with, we have military there and we have bases, and to just jump ship and leave all. I think Afghanistan's now like the number one arms dealer in the world. I mean, not like hundreds and thousands of sets of night vision, stuff that it's the most insane thing that could have ever happened by this communist regime. I mean, it's insane.
Did you spend time in Afghanistan, or were you mostly in Iraq?
I was mostly in Iraq, but like for dudes that were in Afghanistan, like and guys that families that lost loved ones like in Afghanistan, like at the end of the day, you don't want to say like was all the wars for nothing, but it's hard because it's like what really did we we shot a bunch of dudes that were hated America and all that, but it's hard sometimes when stuff like that it's a tragedy, man.
Why do we have to pull out? Like, why so quick? Like, why couldn't it have been a gradual? Why couldn't they have left a base there?
Because the government's incompetent and they can't. They're totally incompetent, and they I don't know. I mean, it's nuts. It's from watching it from sidelines is the most crazy thing you could ever imagine that they would do. So
I feel like someone like you who knows some of these guys, know the tactics, and know the stuff that was happening at that moment. I mean, just seeing like how parents were throwing their babies over fences, they were getting caught in barbed wire, and I was just like, I was brokenhearted, and I'd never been in that kind of combat and all the life that it costs to go through that, and just how much. I mean, we left everything. We left it all.
Well, and not only that, we left to hang out to dry all of our Terps that worked for us, and those dudes, had a major target on their faces.
Your interpreters?
Yeah. And those dudes like risked everything that, we had some really good interpreters in teams, and dudes that, heavy combat because they were with, and some of them, impressed guys enough to where they let them carry, on missions and stuff, and not necessarily be like a shooter in the stick, but like, be armed and able to throw down if they needed to, because they were very loyal, and we just hung them out to dry, and their families, and they probably were murdered and families tortured and God knows what else. It's.
Do we still have like Americans over there, or have we gotten them out finally?
I mean, I'm sure there's probably still a handful of maybe here and there, but like, I don't know. It's
well. So let's talk a little bit about like projecting American security in foreign lands, because you. Like we can within the context of Afghanistan or elsewhere, but like when you served as a GRS agent, GRS operative,
it stands for Global Response Staff.
Okay.
It basically, so like, what it is you are protecting, like the contract. You had to have 6 years in a SOF unit, so whatever SOF unit it was, your Air Force, Marines or Army, Navy, 6 years, and then at least 3 of those years like in combat, like environments and things like that. And then we basically were the armed security for field agents to go out and collect intelligence.
For CIA field agents?
Yeah.
So you guys would you'd be based out of though like a CIA facility or compound or an embassy?
Yeah, some FOB or forward operating base or some place where they were stationed, and then we would, when they went outside the wire, which is leaving that whatever that base or facility is, then we're in charge.
So doing that though, having the U.S. having these areas set up for either the CIA or some government entity with armed military force like at the ready, it allows us to do a lot of things around the world. Gather intel, project that American force, be ready to respond to a variety of global events in ways that are favorable to our country. Did you see some of that play out in your role with GRS? Like how long did you serve in that position?
Yeah, so I did, but when I got out of teams between GRS and that other gig, I did about 10 years doing, kind of both, in both environments. But I unfortunately, a lot of what I saw in, the movies in Hollywood, they make CIA and even the SEAL teams and all this stuff very much sensationalized from what it is, like from a knuckle dragger like me down, perspective of seeing it firsthand. And it's not as sexy as you'd think. Like some of this stuff, like, cause we do meets where they pick up their asset and they're, rolling meet, most of the time we didn't hear the content of what they were discussing with whatever asset they were picking up, because we drop them off in a pod and they'd have their meeting and we go lift and then, come back and drop them back off, or, wherever they need.
What do you mean drop them off in a pod? What's that mean?
Like we go out, we'd be driving and they'd be in the back, and, you have a lead vehicle with the TL, and then, the follow vehicle would have the comms guy, and then, you got your other dudes in there that are just armed dudes. And we'd go pick up the asset, like the case officer would find, hey, here's where we got to pick them up, and we'd have certain tactics and things that we do that. We'd get them, we'd bring them back to
asset, typically being like a local individual.
Yeah, someone that they're getting intel from, and then we'd take them back to a pod, is just like a trailer. They'd go inside,
okay,
conduct their meeting. We'd go do whatever we want for however long it's going to take, and then we'd be on radio, and then we'd go back and drop them back off. But
so most of those meetings happened on like your site. They weren't
we'd bring them back to the FOB or whatever base we were at. Sometimes we went to other bases, and we had different locations around different areas. Like when I was in the Karada district, and stuff. We had different areas that we did stuff. But like sometimes we did rolling meets where you'd pick up their asset and then you just drive around wherever for however long, and then in those cases you'd get to hear what they're talking about, all right? Because they're going through a terp and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the times it was the dumbest conversations. I mean, so dumb. Like your uncle in the consulate, how's he doing? And then they're exchanging, like there was one move we did where there was like $1 million in a briefcase.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it's like you just see like a lot of like gross waste of money. Like even one of the sites I was at had steak dinners, sushi, lobster. It had a pastry chef, like just
for like the U.S. employees there. Is that what you're saying?
For the agency people.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Sounds like
I'm not saying I'm not saying it was a bad site to be at. It had a full pool and
wow.
So he had it great, is what he said. I'm kidding.
Yeah, but
that was probably interesting though. Those like having like just being a kind of like privy to those conversations and
yeah. I mean, so that 13 Hours movie, what that movie nailed was the relationship between case officers with the agency people and team guys, or the soft guys.
Yeah,
because there's that one scene where. What's the actor's name that is the main actor in that?
John Krasinski?
Yeah. He's like being reprimanded at the table by the station chief or whatever. And there's like some dudes behind him like flipping logs and, throwing tires and like beards and all tatted up. And they kind of looked at us like, like Neanderthals, or just, basically like just a bunch, those guys are knuckle draggers, but that, but the moment we get outside the wire, they'd want us with them.
You're pretty important.
Yeah.
How many, like with the teams, with GRS, like anything else, like how many times would you say that you had actually deployed in this type of capacity to go fight overseas or provide security or to do this type of work?
Oof, I don't know.
Like roughly.
I mean, I probably have in Iraq, I probably have at least 3 years of my life, if not 4, and then other various places. But I don't know. I don't know how I could put a number on it really, but
a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. And it's one of those things why I think, I think high school kids in this country should make it mandatory. They have to go to a third world country before they graduate. Because
before
then
they vote.
Well, yeah, before they vote, before they actually make intelligible decisions so that they can see how the rest of the world lives. Because I'm telling you right now, the rest of the world is pretty much a crap hole. Yeah. And this states every time, I'd fly on that GRS gig on this private bird, I'd drive to, DC, and I'd fly in this bird, and again, that bird, it was like leather like first class chairs that folded out, like they'd give you a steak dinner on that thing. I mean, just ridiculous. But the moment I got back in country, I always rented a car and drove back down to Virginia Beach, and the feeling you have being back in the States is just beyond. Coming over the Chesapeake Bridge and people are skiing and stuff, and it's just, you don't see anything like that in these third world countries.
What goes through your mind when you hear all these kids like bash America and say it's the worst country in the world? What goes through your mind when that happens? You see
that they're complete nitwits, just total nitwits, and have zero intelligence for one, but they have no clue apart from their little bubble and their little circle of their friends. They don't understand life. They don't understand life. They've never been put through anything hard. They've never had to do anything hard. They've been given handouts. And what's sad is that these kids eventually are going to be, are going to assume our positions, and this country is going to, go on a trajectory even worse than it already is. but it's primarily because they are influenced by the world of academia, and it's a giant system that is trying to basically ruin our culture.
And it seems to be working, man.
Oh, it is. It is.
A lot of times also when kids travel, you're on a resort or you go to an area where it's like, it's very much like, don't leave this area, guys. And then when we travel quite a bit throughout our careers. And the places that we've gone, we always like going off that beaten path, and you get to see how the people actually live. Yeah. And sometimes it's like, oh, we need to be thankful for what we have. Just the fact of like, within 5 minutes of driving, there's water, there's food, there's pretty much anything you need. And
we live the people in this country live. We're living greater than ancient kings on a regular basis. Greater than ancient kings with the amenities, with the food, I I remember my second rotation in Baghdad. In 2005, we were doing sniper stuff, and we were basically we do a route recce where we look at different buildings, like, let's put guys in there, and we try to pick abandoned spots, but over there, everything looks like it's abandoned, and so we'd try to pick abandoned spots, and then when we actually get inserted by whoever's inserting us, sometimes it's the army guys or whatever, we get into that spot and we break into that apartment or whatever it was building, and there's a family in there, and it's like we got to hold them out for 48 hours in there while we do our thing, and then and all that, but.
So you still operate like, basically someone would sort of like provide security.
Yeah, they'd watch. One guy would have to watch the family, and then fortunately they couldn't leave. For that whole period.
Still operate out of that.
Yeah, we'd still use the building. But like I remember this nice lady, Iraq lady, was trying to feed us, and I looked in her. Like I got a glance into her fridge, or kind of a fridge, and it was like just some like hummus in there and I'm like, we don't need your food, but she was being nice. But they don't understand. Like they just don't understand. Like kids like that don't even understand what it's like to be hungry. Do
you think that's where some of the hatred for?
Real quick, Irene has to leave a bit. I guess the lady went into labor.
Okay.
My camera?
She needs her camera. Yeah. Let's pause for a sec.
Yeah.
I guess. Explain what just happened.
Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling.
All right, so we had to swap out that lens, and we all had like a big fiasco because my wife is in birth video and birth photography, and one of her clients went into labor, so we had to cannibalize some of our gear. So sorry about the pause. What were we talking about?
We were talking about snowflakes.
Yes.
And how these kids have no actual, realistic worldview.
It honestly breaks my heart how much. Like, look, we're not a perfect country. Nobody is perfect. But like at the same time, where else are you this free in the world?
No, well, take for instance, like the race baiting that goes on by the left in this country, and kids thinking that this is a racist country and all that. No, go to these third world countries like that ship contract I did. Indians and like we go to ports, Pakistani ports, then Indian ports. Like Indians and Pakistanis, like they will just kill. They hate each other, just because they just hate each other, And you look at the Muslim world with Sunni and Shiites and hate. I mean, the racism, that supposed racism that goes on in this country is a complete farce. I'm not saying it doesn't exist,
sure,
but it is not like it is in these other countries.
And they don't even hide it over there.
No, it's not even.
Yeah, people think we're racist here. And you just have no clue. I mean, I remember one place I went, they didn't allow me in the building. And I was like, they're like, yeah, we don't like you. You're American. You are not allowed in here. I was like, oh. Yeah. And they just kept calling me the white guy. And I was just like, oh, shit. Like, okay, we're not going in that building.
Well, if you were the white guy overseas, I was like the unicorn. I mean, I got looks like.
Really?
Well, especially when I did that GRS job, like I remember we'd pull up at stoplights or stop signs or whatever, and it'd take a minute for the people next to us to register, like look over.
Where were you? Can I ask where you were?
In Iraq.
Okay.
And they'd look over, in the car, and they'd see me, and they'd be like, "The heck?
I'd never seen that white guy."
Something was up.
Viking ship just landed on the coast.
You do kind of look like a Viking. That's cool.
I was like a unicorn.
Now, is that the vanilla gorilla?
Yeah, it is. That, I mean, that's where the nickname came from the teams. I mean, I had a whole bunch of others, but that was one of them that I mean, I had this. So I had Vanilla Gorilla Security LLC since I've had it since I was doing that CIA job, because that's how they paid me, was through that LLC. And then when I decided to make it a training company, I just kind of, just used the same LLC and came up with a logo and all that kind of stuff.
Did they call you Vanilla Gorilla in the SEALs?
Yeah, in the teams. One of my platoon chiefs did. And then there was other ones like Snow Chimp, Powder. Most people don't know unless they've, that's kind of like, well, that's our era, like that one movie about the albino that has like supernatural powers. And
so it's just you're very
is
blonde.
Is that you?
You're very blonde and very white. Is that why? Is that the?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, at Buds, it was not good for me.
Oh really?
What do you mean? Because you stood out?
Oh yeah. So like every dude tells you, like, when he's prepping you, like if you're asking questions like about Buds and how do you succeed, and they're like, just be a gray man, just kind of
blend in,
disappear. But for me, no. Like the whole class. I mean, I posted a video of one of our PTs on the grinder, one of our Buds PTs, and like you can look out over that whole class. We have the little UDT shorts, little tight UDT shorts on with no shirts on, and everyone's got a shaved head, so everyone kind of looks similar with a shaved head. And you look out over the whole class, and yep, there's Ben. I mean, I was watching it years ago. I was watching it with my kids, showing it to them, and they're like, "Oh, there's Dad, because they're just like a beacon.
Yeah.
Wow. I
mean, at the day one of Buds, I had like multiple instructors coming up to me and like, they're beating you and and when I say beating, I don't mean like physically beating. It's just a military term for like doing exercises until you get smoked. But they're beating me,
which can be worse.
Yeah, they're beating me on the grinder, and like, they're coming up to me. They're like, what's wrong with your skin? Like, are you albino? And and I'm doing like flutter kicks, and I'm like, no, I'm not albino. Like, I got blue eyes. Like, and but they're like, it looks like you got weak genes.
Oh, shoot.
We don't like guys with weak genes.
Really?
It's all about like, what are
So you had to prove them wrong.
Getting alphas with good genes through the program, and it's like, so my problem was that I could play it two ways. I could either slack and get friggin' hammered, because they can like smell weakness to where if you start to, perform, subpar, they will hound you. And then what happens with guys that start performing subpar, if a Buds instructor doesn't like you, you will not make it through Buds. Because you might pass like the evolutions, but they'll smoke you like miserable beforehand, like before a 4 mile time run, to where you can't pass the run. So if they don't like you, you will get smoked. I mean, you by them, and you will not make it through. But if they like you, then you start to build that deranged father figure type thing.
Deranged father.
Yeah. And so I just put out. So I just said, you know what? I'm gonna get noticed. Like if my back's like, they'll look out over the whole class, and my back's just slightly sagging after like 400 push-ups, and they're like, "Whoa, get your back straight." Like that's gonna happen. So I'm just gonna put out as hard as I can, every single evolution as hard as I can, and see where the chips fall. And then I started doing that, and then they started to, hey, this guy puts out, and then it worked in my favor to stand out, because then they know that you're a guy that puts out, and they like you, and then they want you to, they don't maybe give you extracurricular activities as much.
So you've been an instructor in the Naval Special Warfare Training Detachment, the assault cell, as we said in your intro. So you were teaching guys CQC.
Yeah.
Is it a different guy in terms of like your makeup that is a like tactics instructor versus a Buds instructor? I know the role is really different, but do these guys like switch? Like, were you ever a Buds instructor? Like,
no, I would have liked to have been, because it's like you're almost like a mini god, out there. And
he just blatantly threw that out. God sounds like a good
it's
position
like
for me.
whatever you tell them to do, they will do. Like, I mean, whatever. Yeah. The power is insane. But I always thought it would be. But what's funny though is like some Buds instructors, like for certain guys in class periods that you went through, there's certain Buds instructors. If it was my era guys, that if we all said his name, we'd be like, oh yeah, man, he was freaking evil. And then you end up seeing him. What's weird is like you'll run into a Buds instructor, like you'll go to the platoon, and like one of the guys will been a former Buds instructor, where you'll run into him overseas, like whatever. And sometimes they're like completely different, like because it's all psycho like games that they play, where they make certain Buds instructors a certain way, and then others a different way. Like even in Hell Week, they have different shifts. The Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie shift, and Alpha shift is all like the roided out psychopath buds instructors that just beat you all night, and then Bravo shift is like the sarcastic ones that come in and just, which is for me, like screaming at me, like doesn't make me, more apt to quit or whatever. Like it almost motivates me. But like when you're just like, when you're sitting in a chair, with the Bravo guys, and they're just in a chair like this, and they're just like, big N. They're
just not impressed.
Just giving exercise after exercise, like looking at you like in disgust, like you're a disgusting human being. Like that to me is more, I don't know, just worse.
Yeah.
And then the Charlie guys were not, I want to say coddling, but they were a little bit nicer than the Bravo guys, but they would all have these personalities and,
this is all like an orchestrated thing.
Oh yeah. Okay. From a student's perspective, you think it's chaos, but so when I was at our assault cell, I went out to the West Coast to coordinate some of the stuff that we were doing on both coasts. And there was a Hell Week going on. And I had a buddy that was a bud instructor there. And I went in and, looked inside the first phase room and team room and all that stuff. And they had a board with like the amount of time they're keeping them in the surf zone here and the time, because it's all calculated, and it's a very methodical the way they do it. But from a student's perspective, it's just like chaos. They're just like making you do whatever they feel like, but it is much more calculated. But like on during Hell Week, every night you just lock arms and you'd wave goodbye to the sun because now the night's coming.
Like literally, you'd actually wave goodbye.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they'd make you wave goodbye to the sun because now night's coming and the cold's coming and they're gonna keep you out in the surf zone and all that stuff. But that's when Alpha Crew would come over. Like Charlie Crew would leave, like the nice Charlie Crew. And I say nice, but somewhat, okay, like not like total maniacs. Yeah. They leave and then they just kind of like disappear off and, just fade away. And then Alpha Crew would come over the berm with their megaphones and scream and like, we got you all night. It's Alpha's here. And we're like, oh gosh, Alpha Crew's here. Like,
are a lot of guys quitting in those moments too? Like,
well, yeah, some guys are like, I'm not taking Alpha Crew for another night. Like,
yeah.
I read a Navy SEAL book once, and I quit my third chapter. I was like, I can't take this. It's too stressful.
You couldn't even read your way through.
I couldn't even read No, I finished the book, but I was just like, oh my gosh. It's the mental game that's like, especially you were 18. Like I was so stupid at 18, like dumb. And like you throw me into the middle of that. I mean, I'm impressed. I'm impressed that anybody can make it through that.
They're master manipulators, and most guys quit Hell Week in the first 36 hours.
Wow.
Which you're really not that worn down yet. I mean, the whole 5 days, you get like 3 hours, 3.5 hours of sleep collectively, but you're not, so the majority of guys quit in that first 36. And then if you make it past Wednesday night, unless you get hurt, you're going to make it to Friday afternoon when it ends.
So you're saying it's a mental thing, emotional thing. Pretty much.
I mean, for the most part, I mean, the cold is a mental thing. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like cold is across the board sucks, for everybody. But there's a point past Wednesday evening to where you're on autopilot, like, what's that Ace Ventura movie where he says that the engine's running, but there's nobody behind the wheel. Like,
yeah,
you're just you're checked out, man. And you're starting to hallucinate, you're starting to see weird things. Like, there was one dude that was smacking the water. We were out in the San Diego Bay and he's smacking the water. He's thinking mermaids were attacking the boat. And another dude's grabbing at my boot because he thinks it's a Snickers bar. He's like, give me that Snickers bar. I'm like, oh, that's not my Snickers bar. It's my boot. And, yeah, you just see weird, you do weird stuff. Now, quick
question. Did you have a Snickers bar hidden in your boot?
I didn't.
Okay.
I did. But I was like, I never did drugs in high school or anything like that. So I was always wanted to like hallucinate, just to have the experience. So I was like excited about it.
Here he goes again.
And, but I think because I was like consciously thinking about that the whole week, like when am I going to start hallucinating?
It didn't happen.
Like lights looked weird. Like I remember seeing like light, weird reflections off like lights and things like that. But not like some dudes like we're paddling along and there's this thing around the world on the last night where you paddle all the way around the island, Coronado Island. And there was one dude like, we're just out in the middle of San Diego Bay just paddling. And he's like, stop. And we're like, what? And he's like, stop sign. And we're like, no stop sign, bud.
Jeez.
Wow. And he wanted to hallucinate.
I tried, but
the human body and brain does some weird things.
Yeah, lack of sleep. I mean, like literally, like I remember like falling asleep, standing up, like with a boat on my head.
Yeah.
Like, and then sometimes, I posted a video on social media about pays to be a winner, because the everybody gets a trophy thing in our culture is so opposite to everything that's good in life. But like in buds, it's like pays to be a winner. Like if you win a race, you get rest. But it's kind of a reciprocal thing to where you start winning races, you get more rest, and then you win the next race. And and it's kind of like a snowball effect in a way to where you perform better. But having a good boat crew is obviously key in that instance. But you get to rest. But like I posted a video where we had a good boat crew. We won a lot of races, but they set you down and we set the boat up as a windbreak, and you just sit back and they let you rest for however long between the next evolution, and you pass out like. Immediately you fall asleep. Like you lean back on the dude next to you, like whether he's peeing on you, like it doesn't matter because like it felt good. Like
warm.
Yeah, like it was straight up like some stuff was out of Dumb and Dumber. I remember Camp Surf, like one dude was below me and he's like, or I was below him, or no, he was below me and I was like, dude, I gotta pee. And he's like, just go, man. Like, and he's like, and I'm peeing. He's like, oh, it's warm. Because any amount of warmth,
and
it's kind of back to that conversation about like. You don't know what you have until things suck or you don't have it. Like, and that's why, like in the teams, like we would go sometimes in the platoons for a period where we would do, training and different stuff where we hadn't had something that really sucked for a while, and guys would kind of look at each other and be like, "It's about time for something to go wrong in training or some mission to go, where it sucks," because it almost like brings you back to life. And then the best team guy stories that I have. Are things where they went south and things sucked, and the camaraderie and the bondage that happens, in that moment. And so, like, yeah, peeing on yourself is not normal, but you're warm for like 10 seconds of it. But it's also a love-hate thing because you're inside of your waistband and your inner thighs are completely raw, like meat.
So it probably hurts.
Meat because of the sand.
Yeah.
Imagine running around with sandpaper all week because they dump sand on your back, they dump sand in your pants, you're got sand in your.
What do they call that? A sugar cookie?
And I mean, you see, like if you go to Coronado Island, like dudes that have been through Hell Week, because they walk around with this little waddle thing, because you're friggin' chafed so bad. I mean, guys, I got a buddy in my buds class that has permanent scars around his belt line from where it was chafing. But so you're warm for a moment, but then the pee's burning, you're chafing, but it's just kind of like worth the cost risk benefit. Like it's almost worth it for a moment. Then you're like, it burns.
So how does all this stuff translate to the SEAL teams then? Like obviously you do missions that suck, you do things that are hard, you do things that hurt. But like, why is it so important to go through this? To prepare guys for what's to come?
Because like buds instructors would say in buds, like, I've been more miserable in certain spots in the platoon than buds. And at the time as a student, you're like, no friggin' way. But then there's certain stuff in training. I mean, I remember this one training thing. We were climbing Pikes Peak and doing cold weather training, and this storm came in, and dude, it was bad, man. I mean, dudes were almost falling off the side of the mountain. It was the coldest night I have ever experienced in that tent, and I was like begging my tent buddy to let me in his sleeping bag. I was like, buddy, let me in with you. And he was like, and I'm like, we'll get nut to butt and we'll be warm. And his face is just like out of his, he's all zipped up, it's just his face. He's like, no, bro, you're not coming in. And I'm like, let me in, man. Like I was peeing in my Nalgene bottle and throwing it down by my feet to try to keep it warm. It was horrible. And so that buds instructor was right. Like, there was times where I felt more miserable in certain aspects in the platoon than in buds.
And so by testing that beforehand, like you make sure guys are not gonna literally and figuratively quit, like when it counts most.
Yeah, no, like if I remember when that storm came in and if we were going to take the normal, our point man, the guy was navving us, through the mountains. If he took the normal route that he had planned, we would have never gotten to base camp. We probably all would have, something bad would have happened. So he had to reroute our plan, which took us like basically like edge of a cliff, like crossing stuff that we normally would never have done, but it was the only option to get to the campsite, in this storm to make it happen. And if we had a dude that just stopped and said, I'm done, like, what do you mean?
Right.
Like, that's not an option, bud. So,
wow.
Do you have any particular like stories that really just stand out as like pivotal as far as like changed you, that like that you knew like, oh shit, this is real, or this scared the living heck out of you, or were you just, was that trained out of you?
yeah, I wouldn't say like anything is trained out of you. Like every dude is going to, like, in a firefight or a violent encounter, is going to experience some of those fight or flight systems to some degree. You know, it's just how you manage those fight or flight systems, which is why, like, in a lot of my civilian classes, you know, I have a slide that goes through different things that happen to your body, you know, when you're in a stressful situation. And, you know, I mean, I've seen actual, you know, military guys, like the Army sniper guy we had, freeze when we were getting shot at by this belt-fed machine gun, and I had to go back and grab him, and you know, he was just frozen. You know, it happens even to military guys. So, like, I always tell civilians, like, unless you train, because whatever you train on, and what you do on the range or what you do in your training is gonna translate to real life. So whatever you do, however you wear your gun, whatever you do in training, make sure it's exactly what you would do in real life, because civilians are just not going to have the amount of, you know, put in enough of those situations to know how to manage it. And unless you have muscle memory created for those certain types of things in training, I mean, even, you know, perfect example is like magazine changes, you know, in the teams, like in training, you know, in a land warfare environment where you're patrolling around the woods, and then they put a target up and they say contact right, and you're shooting and moving around and stuff. You're out in the woods, and guys would take their magazines and they'd stuff them in their camouflage tops. Like, they tuck their shirts in and stuff them in, so that after the training was done, they wouldn't hike all over Kingdom Come and have to pick up magazines. But then what happens when guys are starting to rotate overseas in combat? They're, instead of doing a quick magazine change and dumping that mag and putting a new one, they're stuffing it, taking the time to stuff it in their shirt, because that's what they did, you know, in training, which is going to equate to real life. So no one's going to say that you don't have some fear or a level of fear of that fight or flight system being pegged when you're in a firefight or in those situations. It's just the experience of, the more you're exposed to it, the more it becomes normal, where you manage it more.
So if that becomes the normal, that you can manage that, what is it like coming back to civilian life, man? I mean, because
I mean, yeah, and a lot of guys that get out of the teams do not make a good transition. You know, a lot of guys will go into other types of jobs that, you know, that tap that dopamine.
Yeah.
But the problem for a lot of guys, if they get out and just do the whole total civilian thing without, you know, anything else, like, when your dopamine system is pegged all the time with being in that environment, it's very hard. Like, you almost need to pick up like some hobby, like base jumping or riding ATVs out west, like, you know, on crazy trails and stuff, to be able, like, my one buddy that I did GRS with for a long time, he's one of my best friends. Like, he kind of had to, you know, he got into racing, you know, UTVs and stuff, because it was, and I didn't think it was that exciting until I went out with him, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm like, this does tap your dopamine system. Because he took me on a ride, and I was literally like more scared than some operations I went on, because I thought we were going to die, because he's whipping through, because he's just flying through these trails, and I'm like, this is insane. But
they use those in some units, don't they?
They do. We had them in one of our mobility cells, but they weren't as used as much as that we, you know, I didn't use them a ton.
Okay.
But they even had, like, some guys had some recce teams where guys would go out, you know, to the target and give intelligence before the assault team would come. They'd go out on dirt bikes and get dropped off in a helicopter and ride off on a dirt bike and go out there and set up and, you know, give intel to the assault team coming in for the assault and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you have to. It's hard with civilian life to be able to sometimes to make that transition.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Do you want to watch some videos? I could switch over since we don't have Irene normally to do the switching. Do you want to watch?
Let's watch a few of those. We'll wrap with that.
Yeah.
And then
I'll switch over.
Yeah,
just keep
be
going.
Great. So what we want to do, we mentioned we're going to do this. We want to show you a few clips. I think some of this you'll be pleased with. Some of this you'll shake your head at as far as tactics, but pulling clips from movies. And I want to have you kind of react and even kind of talk through what you're seeing.
So my wife won't watch any really action movies with me because
you're picky about it.
Yeah. Well, because I'll make comments. I mean, she will watch it with me, but I've stopped making any comments to her. I mean, I show her like one of my tactical videos or whatever that I think's like the one we made, and she's like, "Yeah, it looks pretty good," and I'm like, "What's wrong with you?"
She's like, "Where's the story, though?"
I know. Well, my other thing too is like I married a woman who is all girl, because I think what I was drawn to with her was that I was around a bunch of just meat, and alpha, like just all the time, just like. Just tipping Copenhagen, just let's go kill dudes. Like, and then I find a woman that's like not that, like someone that's not that, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a nice break,
Yeah. It's what is that?
Like she's not gonna sit there. She's not gonna sit there and talk friggin' tactics with me,
Yep.
But there's some dudes that like marry chicks that like literally think they're a SEAL. Like you'll be at a bar and they'll be or wherever, and they'll be like arguing tactics with you. No, I'm not kidding. Like
are some of them in like some sort of like combat role?
No, like they're just their husband's a team guy, and they're because they were a frog hog or something, and they went after that, because
hold on. What's a frog hog?
Wait, frog hog? What'd you say?
It's these chicks that just want to go after, date SEALs.
Really?
Which my wife was not one, not that at all. Yeah. So
we learned a new word, frog hog.
Yeah,
I take it that's not a compliment.
No, it's just basically, well, like you'd have like your term like a gold digger for something.
Yeah, or
rich. Like it's just chicks that want to be with team guys.
Or what do they call it? The girls that go backstage?
Groupies.
Yeah. Well, that's essentially what it is. It's a groupie.
All right, so did we want to do what was the name of the movie that we...
So pull up, Jake, do you have that list in front of you?
I do. Which one do you want to see?
Pull up clip 4.
Give me a second. Do you know the name of it real quick?
Yeah, so it's the movie Navy SEALs.
Which I'll say as a caveat, there's 2 actors in this movie that were in my buds class.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like playing team guys?
Yeah.
Was it Charlie Sheen?
No, not in this one.
Was Charlie Sheen in your buds class?
No, in Act of Valor.
Oh, really?
My swim buddy is... I don't know if I should... Well, I guess I could say
well, hold on. He
was in the movie.
Hold on. We're going to talk about him.
His name's Ray Mendoza. He was my swim buddy. Like, so I didn't... The Act of Valor when I wasn't like... that wasn't like something like, oh, I'm going to go watch Act of Valor, Which, in these guys' defense, they kind of forced them to do it. Like, they made them do it in a way for a recruiting thing.
It felt like... I enjoyed it a lot. It felt like a recruitment.
Yeah, but they kind of forced them to do it. And another guy, one of the guys in here, he's got a gold tooth, AJ James. He was in my buds class. In fact, I actually just worked with him not too long ago on a contract, yeah. And so when I watched this, I'm just like... a buddy, wanted to watch it with me, and I'm like, fine, I'll watch it. And we're watching it, and I'm like, what? Like, it was weird to see them because I hadn't seen them since Buds, on the big screen. But
so I'm going to push play on this one real quick. Review this one.
So Jake,
what is this one? This is Navy SEALs 1990.
Yeah. Paxton goes to thermal, switching to.
Do you want to watch it?
On Starlight, switching to thermal.
Hold on, we're gonna watch from Jake, a minute and 37 to a minute, or sorry, 37 to a minute 50.
37 seconds?
Yeah. So they're moving through the street.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
You probably know the movie.
I know
You know it well. Okay.
All right, here we go.
In fact, I use this clip in my night vision class.
All right. So just talk us through anything you see, good or bad. If you're the instructor, make sure it's down enough, Jake. Where
first of all, pause. First of all, they're running around with MP5s, okay, which is 9mm, which is not, it's not. The movies are not like real life. Like I've shot dudes before. Actually, one of the first guys I shot, like they didn't go down right away.
Oh, with 223 or 556.
With 556. Yeah, they didn't go down right away, and especially like early in the wars, they were using green tip, which is a tungsten core round, which just zips right through them and doesn't do anything. If you're shooting at them behind a car or some sort of structure, it's good because it'll penetrate through it. But just flesh, it just zips right through. But like, that's why I harp on in my concealed carry classes and stuff, shot placement, headshots, or right through the heart or something that drops that blood pressure or completely, renders that individual down immediately. Because they just, even hunters, like you shoot a deer with a sabot slug and they still runs like 50 yards and it's got a giant hole through its heart. Well, humans are resilient as well. and they're the same. I mean, I was shooting these dudes and they were still running. I thought I was missing. No, I was hitting them and just they hadn't gone down. But my point to that is with this 9mm. Now, in their defense, like that's what they had back in the day for CQB. They had MP5s. Like, and I still had some in my inventory when I was an ordnance guy. When I showed up to the team, I was in charge of all the gun stuff. And I still had some in my inventory. Nobody used them. It was more of like a nostalgic thing. Like guys would go to the range with them just for fun because of this movie, primarily, but it's 9mm. It's not super, it just does not have the knockdown power. The long guns they had at this time, 90s, was M14s, which, were just large rounds. Like they didn't have.
It's like a 308 or something. Is that what that was?
M14s, yeah, 7.62.
7.62.
But yeah, they I would not choose an MP5 in this, because this isn't, they're outside, so this is more of a urban, what we called SOUC in the SEAL teams, or mount, type urban environment, and MP5s.
Not good.
No.
So I want to ask you, they referred to their sniper here that we're going to see as God.
Yeah.
What? Any comment?
No, that it's just that it's awesome.
Okay.
Also, 50 cal. That's what he's using here.
Okay.
None of my snipers, in my platoon, I had to lug their guns around as the ordnance guy all the time. Never broke open their 50 cals ever.
Ever.
Too big?
Maybe in Afghanistan, a few guys might have used them, but never did that thing ever come out.
Huh? Why?
Just the weight of it.
Here, pause it for a second.
It wasn't super accurate, and it just wasn't practical for what the type of stuff that we did.
Super loud too.
Because I think the way they got into this target is they haloed, they jumped into it, right? So you got to jump that thing in, which is extremely heavy, and then you got to hump it into your target. No, because most of the stuff we all did was get dropped off by helicopters and hiking in. You're not lugging a 50 cal around, but it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah.
But movies never lie, buddy.
I know.
All right, so he flipped on thermal.
Which is not thermal, though. Like, it's some computer animated. Look at the thermal. Here,
wait, go back.
Oh, yeah, you have to
go back.
Okay, this?
Yeah.
Nothing on Starlight. Switching to thermal.
What is Starlight? Is that a real
You
thing?
can't see through freaking walls with thermal.
It's on TV. It's real.
I know. It's ridiculous. And the thermal they had back then was like just a joke. It wasn't even like, they didn't have a scope that was thermal back in the 90s.
Okay.
None of that. I mean, even the thermals I had in the early 2000s were kind of crappy.
What about this? Watch this. There's a lot of rounds that just went out of that gun right past that guy.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, man.
Oh, yeah. Probably more than 32.
Oh, yeah. All right, that's it. So,
Wow.
So those guys all lined up. They all sat down and lined up in the street. Is that like, what is that? No?
That's again, that is remember I talked about how like Vietnam era tactics to where, so this is a urban / land warfare type of environment movement. This isn't CQB, CQC, but in the way that we used to do that when I showed up as a new guy was we'd be patrolling or something and we'd take a contact and a whole element of guys would stand up and make a movement, whether it's an aggressor movement where you're trying to flank them or something or break away from the contact, but the whole fire team would stand up together, up, down, and then shoot at the same time, and then the other element would move back or move forward or whatever the calls were that were coming over.
Is that so you're not shooting each other?
Yeah. But okay. But my point is that the whole fire team would get up and then get down. Well, we started realizing in all these friggin' getting in contacts and in firefights that like, why are we having all 4 dudes stand up at the same time and then go down? Why don't one dude, every dude, it works with a pair, like that element is still making that tactical movement, but each dude is broken up into him and his buddy, and I'm up, only one dude's up at a time and the other dude's down. I'm up, he's down. The other 2 guys are working their thing. He's up at some time, he's down. Using cover and concealment between your bounding movements and moving. The whole thing where you're all up and then you're down is ridiculous because now every dude is highlighted and his signature is exposed to take rounds rather than having one dude do it at a time, in these pairs and move between cover and concealment.
I feel like with the military, I love history, and I see this a lot where I watch these old movies and they're talking about tactics from back in the day. I'm glad that it's evolving as far as with people seeing that things need to change. Because, think about it, man, we used to line up and take shots at each other.
Oh, I know.
And
Civil War? I can't imagine the Civil War thing. It's like I don't want to be in the front row, bud.
Yeah, and then, for real. And then
I'd be like, why don't we fight these dudes from behind?
Well, people were like, it's dishonorable. It's like, hey, man, y'all are lining up and taking turns. This isn't chess. Like, what are we doing?
Do you feel like Vietnam was where that changed? Like with the idea that actually the entirely different set of rules, this sort of guerrilla warfare that isn't honorable, that ended up kind of being what SEALs adopted, is that kind of stuff,
kind of.
right?
I mean, they teach you in buds to think differently. They don't want you conventional. None of our guys' gear was the same. Some guys were wearing real tree pants and a cry top with a plate. I mean, everyone had their med kit in the kind of the same area so that if someone went down, they knew where it was. But apart from that, dude, you wear your stuff however you want it to. But they wanted that type of thinking, to think outside the box, because then you translate that to tactics, and they want you thinking differently for how you operate. So we would do different stuff to where we'd come in, have a helicopter come in, we'd already hike into the target, have a helicopter come in and land, we're getting off, right? We did things, before, and then they're drawn to that because they think we're getting off, and then we friggin' flank them and hit them from behind, which we've already hiked in and set up in an L, and then shoot them like fish in a barrel.
That's smart. Using your own old tactics.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine that was in Fallujah, and he was a sniper, and his platoon, they drove a Humvee down. And there was this area they were trying to draw out all these fighting age males, and kill a bunch of them. And they knew they were there. They were just hidden and kind of embedded in the city. And they blew up till they got out of the Humvee and started shooting like they were in a contact, a firefight. And they blew the Humvee up, and then they egressed. They got out and went to fell back, and other guys picked them up and they left. And then, but it was all a show. And then all these dudes started to come out of the woodwork and dance on, and aloha stack bar. And then what did the snipers do? Pow, 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 pow. Just smoked them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dave, any other clips you want to see?
Guerrilla tactics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go to clip 5. So this is Zero Dark 30, Bin Laden raid.
This one right here? Is this the
one? Which you got, guys that were on this raid, right?
I do.
So
very close friends.
Yeah. So
it looks like I'm already at 34 seconds in.
Yep. So just to kind of preface this really quick, these guys obviously have already made noise on the target. They've breached, some outer walls and things like that. And but it's interesting to me. I thought this, in contrast to maybe what we just watched with the Navy SEALs movie, I thought that this
the documentary, right?
this yeah, right. This captured a lot of what I hear you talk about, which is slow, deliberate, even communicating through the threshold.
Yes.
These guys are calling enemies out.
Yeah.
And particularly it shows a breacher. So again, just kind of want your opinion on this. So go ahead, Jake.
They're quieter than I am going to get pizza in the middle of the night.
Well, that's the whole goal, man.
Definitely not dynamic.
No.
Trying the doorknob first,
Yeah.
Thought that was interesting.
Oh, shoot.
So
I don't know what that one dude, I don't know who, had the tactical oversight of this movie, but I don't know what that one dude was doing in the fatal funnel right there.
So go back, Jake.
Shooting through it.
So he backed away from the door, standing in front of it. Is that what you're saying? He should have just got up against the wall, or what?
Yeah. He seems like he's in what would be the fatal funnel.
Yeah.
Which is where you don't want to be. I mean, the other thing is that's an outward opening door right there. One of the things, I mean, and these are this is just 1% stuff that I'm picking apart. But when I come up to an outward opening door, and I'm gonna have my gun, like I call it the wing guard. I'm gonna retract my rifle so that I go up to do that, to pop that door. It's outward and overhead door. It's gonna swing this way, but the crack of that door is where, as soon as if that door would open, there'd be a dude standing right there. But I have my gun where, see how he low ported his gun?
Mm-hmm.
He put his gun at the low port and then he went to go open it and obviously it was locked. But I'm going to have, like, if that wasn't locked and I popped it open, my gun is going to be, if there's a dude standing right there, I'm going to be able to sling lead right on, right at his chest center mass level. So that's a little bit 1% thing that if I was tactically overseeing this movie, that I would change. But this right here, I mean, he's way out. I don't know what he's doing in that little.
Exactly what it probably was. Is some camera guy like myself was like, I need to see you over here.
Probably.
And there's people arguing like, no, that's not tactical. It's like, no, I can't see it.
Yeah, I don't know what he was doing out in the fatal funnel like that, because you'd be against those walls on both sides, and now obviously you need to ply around and sling lead through the door, but you're not going to be out in the middle of anything.
So
bebopping around.
So go back, Jake. Go
Got
back
it.
1 second. Right there. It sounds like he calls him out, or is trying to here.
Get a fly, eat dick. They're down. Roll your hands in the air. Yellow. Down. Yellow. Down.
You're killing me.
Look off.
Okay, pause it there. You talk about like not committing, not blowing through the threshold and having to commit and make decisions.
Yeah.
That felt very slow and like in control. Like they were communicating, they called out. She didn't get shot in that scenario, which perhaps could have been different, right? If they went dynamic.
Yeah. If I was filming this if you're thinking tactics is like, you can pie out a threshold as many times as necessary, right? Like I tell law enforcement guys, you've taken my class, like you pie once, and then if you're splitting the door, and you pie back to be split so that you make entrance opposite each other for 1 and 2 man. But like, let's say you pie across and you're pieing back, but then you hear a noise or you hear something, like pie again. You know what I mean? Like, use that cover and concealment, pie again. There's nothing there's nothing driving you to run into that room. So I might, especially that dude just slung lead through it. She just walked out of it. I might get a full good another pie of that space. Maybe I see that dude laying on the ground and maybe I tap some rounds in him from the threshold rather than being inside the room. Like I might pie it again.
Yeah.
Just to get a bit more warm and fuzzy that I know what's really going on in that room.
With who you know and what you know, how much of that movie is pretty realistic?
There's some realistic elements to it. There's obviously some stuff that I'm not going to say and can't say, but there's some really cool.
That's the stuff we really want you to say.
I know, but
kidding. Last clip.
What you got?
Go to clip 1, or no, sorry, clip 2.
A guy in my bud's class was actually from that movie. That dude that clacked himself off and killed all those CIA people.
From which movie? 0 Dark 30?
Yeah.
He was in the movie?
Yeah. He earlier in the movie, it was the biggest disaster that the CIA ever had with, this guy played him for all this time and then, set up this meet with them, and then he had an S-vest and blew himself up because he, basically tricked him. And they didn't do the chick CIA lady didn't do the proper, basically vetting and what the GRS guys normally do, because, she was like, oh, he's going to give us some high up, Al-Qaeda guy, and he's going to give us his intel, and he played him and then blew himself up and killed about, 8 people or something like that, including the guy that I went through buds with, was doing GRS on his first contract.
Oh,
man.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite scenes of any SEAL movie ever.
Really?
This is the hot extract.
I haven't seen this, and I think I only watched it once, and it was like 8 years, whenever it came out. So I don't remember much from it.
And so you said some of these guys. You've done some recent contracts overseas with these guys.
Yeah.
But I love this scene. This is hot extract. They've stirred up the hornet's nest. They're running out. And then they're supported by the SWIC guys, the riverboat guys. Yeah. So, all right, let's play it.
Good to go. You took one to the face, man. You're a hard motherfucker. Where are we? We're on our way to extract.
That's your buddy, right? Who's talking?
AJ,
Oh, wait, go back. Sorry.
Yeah, you got it.
I think that was AJ.
We're on our way to extract. They took one to the face. Do we get it? Yes. Oh, I got it.
Yeah, that's AJ.
AJ,
Yeah.
splash it.
Water!
And that's Ray Mendoza, my swim buddy in Buds.
Oh, they do that! I got her! I had to go out!
Yeah, AJ's been in like Transformers, a whole bunch of movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was just in a Will Smith movie.
Is he like the go-to guy for them, or
No, but Ray Mendoza is right now.
really?
Yeah, he's like Hollywood's go-to guy for team guy stuff.
Well, next movie I do, you'll be my guy.
Aren't you doing like a Hallmark movie next or something?
Yeah.
All right, pause it. So I just love this scene because the overwhelming firepower that the
Well,
bad guys
they got the
have.
miniguns with the SWAT guys.
Yeah. So what I think this is a tactic to basically shoot over guys' heads as they're in the water. You ever been in that situation? In training even?
Yeah, I mean, we did stuff with the SWAT guys. I mean, unfortunately, those SWAT guys, man, they got the raw end of the deal in the wars because there's no friggin' water.
There's no water. Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is like South America.
Yeah. So they didn't, unfortunately, good dudes, but they just didn't get, they didn't get worked much because we didn't need them.
Yeah.
But I mean, initially in a firefight, like the initial thing is that violence of action, like make them like realize they just stirred up the hornet's nest, like, make them question whether they really should have done what they just did initially. But yeah, I mean, if you got to shoot over guys' heads, like you got to. I mean, there's certain tactics and things that we don't violate at the end of the day, but a lot of those are it's loose, like and guys trust each other, and at the end of the day, like you trust your buddy next to you that he's not going to shoot you, and so you can push the envelope a little bit sometimes with how you do things that conventional units can't do because they just they'll have fratricide and they'll shoot each other. So,
But if you do get shot, you get Budweiser, right? Or Bud Light.
you get Bud Light six pack.
I cannot believe that.
Here's to you, Mr. Blue on Blue.
All right. Well, look, we gotta wrap this.
Yes.
We've taken a ton of your time.
Yep.
Which, thank you for that.
This has been awesome. I can say, having been through a few of your courses now, it's incredible training. It is like if you know anything about the SEAL teams, people like you hear this crawl, walk, run philosophy that's taught. I feel like that is the experience that we've had and that you teach. It's very accepting of people at different levels. And I think even in like law enforcement departments, you probably see that to some degree.
Oh yeah.
But if you're interested in taking a course, if you're civilian or if you're a law enforcement agency, there is a lot that you're going to take from working with Ben, working from his team. You've got a lot of guys that are elite guys that.
Yeah, I got another former Navy SEAL that helps me out with classes. A guy that retired out of SEAL Team 1, 3, and 7.
Yeah.
He just retired a couple years ago. I got two
20 something years, right?
Yeah, I got two pure SWAT guys that work for me as well.
Yeah.
So.
And you've got students that travel from pretty far. So if you're in the Midwest at all, we're in Illinois. It's where we're all based. But if you're anywhere in the Midwest and are interested in this training, interested in having him come to your agency, we're going to put all your stuff in our description of the video. So
and our law, we're focusing on Illinois law enforcement right now, but doesn't mean we won't do. I mean, we'll go wherever somebody wants. So
hey, wherever the money's at, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
man, for real, thanks for coming on. I've learned already so much about what you guys do. It makes me really appreciate the sacrifice that you guys did, and it breaks my heart that people don't show as much respect as they should to guys like you. So I want to say thank you from a guy who honestly benefits from the stuff you guys had to do. I mean, I've done some amazing stuff because we have a free country, and it takes guys like you, and I want you to know I appreciate you.
Thanks.
And
thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, we'll have you back on again. I mean, anytime something happens, I'm going to call you now and just be like, what the fuck's going on?
You're going to be our resident expert.
Yes. We need one of those because I feel like so many people have their opinions on things, but they haven't been there. They don't know what things are like. No. They don't know from the guy's point of view. And
yeah, I mean, I still got buddies that are still in. Granted, they're all like Master Chiefs, and they're about, the sad thing is that I'm going to be, my era of guys, they only probably got a couple years left, and then they're all going to be gone. And then you're going to be left with nobody that's seen combat again. Like all the my buddies that are still in that are Master Chiefs and above about getting out there. Like, the sad thing is like all that combat experience with, the 2001 to, 18, or whatever that is going to be gone. And now you'll still have the tactical things that they've, benefited from, but you're going to have guys that are, that we haven't been in any conflict.
Wow.
Or is the military going to be contracting guys like you guys then to like provide that combat experience?
They should. They should.
Probably.
We should advertise to them specifically.
Yeah.
Hey man, thanks for coming on, and your time is valuable, so thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, let's wrap, guys. Dun, 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 dun. That's it.